Welcome to the Friday Night Drive podcast, West and South edition, round two of the playoffs. We're here. And last week, JT, last week was really good for a week one, I thought, anyway. And I say this as a dude who covered like a 66-0 game. I thought it was a good week one.
It was a phenomenal week 10, week one of the playoffs, however you want to say it. An amazing week. I had an 8-man game that came down to a stop at the 3-inch line with about 40 seconds left. And just games across the state, overtime games, close games. We'll talk about a lot of them as we preview round two of the playoffs coming up here. But, normally, famously, that first week of the playoffs has just so many blowout games and 9-0s versus 5-4s and just the way the cards fell this year, and we kind of knew that might happen when you have teams like, Morris and going on the road and you kind of knew that you're going to have some good teams as visiting teams. And man, we really did.
Well, you mentioned Morris, so we might as well start at 5A. We can start down the bottom of the bracket there with them if you want, because that was a whooping they put on Troy Triad last week.
Yeah, 57-28, and it wasn't really that close. Morris, we've said here the past couple of weeks when it looked like Morris, was going to maybe be 5-4, maybe 6-3. We weren't sure with that out-of-state opponent that they finished up with, but boy, that's a tough draw to have a great season and then have Morris the first round, and yeah, they walloped Troy Triad 57-28. Now they get to host a Highland team that's out of the same Mississippi Valley Conference that Troy Triad was. One of the tri-champions in that conference. Troy, Triad, Highland, and Waterloo were the three conferences in that Mississippi Valley conference. I'm not real familiar with, I must confess.
But Highland's a shame. I mean, what do you need to know? I've studied them for years now.
It's ISSIPPI, right? But you know what? There is something interesting, there's a common opponent here, which you may not suspect or would not have expected going in. But Highland played Rochelle back in week 3. That was one of Rochelle's, Sandwich and Plano were leaving. The Interstate 8's the Interstate 6 now. We got to find somebody. And that's who they found. So Rochelle won that game 41-22, a 19-point victory. They beat Morris by, 22, I think.
37-15.
Back in week 6, which was kind of a surprising, eye-opening win for, check out Rochelle, and one of those should Morris panic games. And the answer, of course, was no, Morris shouldn't panic. This is one, you have reason to believe that Morris can win this one. They get to be at home, 4:00 kickoff Saturday, and, find their way back into the third round again.
Yeah, no, I think this is set up really nice. Like you said, they're back at home. This is set up pretty good for them to win. And while our 5A preview is pretty much just an Interstate 8 preview, right? I mean, that's just pretty much how we're rolling right now, who we got left. The aforementioned Hubs of Rochelle. They have an interesting one against Bennett Academy. I'm not 100% sure what Bennett's bringing to the table. Private school. I mean, that's more of the Mothership podcast with Susan Rodewald or possibly Josh's take care of that one. We certainly know Rochelle, and like you said, they had that was their kind of arrival party against Morris. They've just been so dominant since then. This is going to be a really interesting one.
Yeah, I think it will. Bennett's kind of been scrapping a little bit down the stretch since a 4-0 start. They got losses to, don't get me wrong, good teams. They have, lopsided loss to Mount Carmel, lopsided loss to Fenwick, lopsided loss to Naz. If you're going to have lopsided losses to 3 teams, that's a pretty good 3 teams to suffer that too. But since then, they got a win over DePaul Prep, which pretty much secured them a playoff spot. And then last week they blanked Chicago Perspectives leadership. I always think of that old Saturday Night Live sketch, Perspectives. They beat a 48-0 win in that first round at home. So now Bennett gets to go to Hub Country and test themselves again in one of those matchups where, Bennett's played some really good teams. They also have, wins over Moline and Hillcrest. And so this is going to be a tough test, I think, for Rochelle. It should be, I think, a pretty good ball game. But like you said, I don't know Bennett as intimately as I probably wish I would, previewing this game. But Rochelle's done really well this year, obviously 9-1, and I think we have a good one on tap here.
Yeah, they did play Marmion last week, so they got they're already beaten one private. They actually threw the ball. I mean, not like they're a full-on only ever run the ball, but they did have 3 passing touchdowns from, I believe it's senior quarterback Carson Lewis. I also had the back, and I should have put down his first name into my notes because there have literally been over 700,000 Villalobos. Them and Gensers have just, that's just pretty much every year there's one of each. But he had a big week with, I think he had like 170 on the ground. So not that they were neglecting that running game because they probably never will. So they at least have the ability to go balance. They can respond to whatever Bennett throws at them. I mean, this should be a really interesting one.
I think so. And just while we're in 5A, I kind of dip back to the south side just to mention that Joliet Catholic happens to be going to Sacred Heart Griffin. That's, the holy cow. But and we have another matchup down in 1A of some teams that win a lot of state championships, not at that level, but that win a lot too. But yeah, just a loaded 5A bracket. And we have another game. You mentioned Interstate 8 preview. We have Sycamore, undefeated, a top seed. They have to go visit Chicago Westinghouse College Prep.
Yeah, I definitely did want to mention Sycamore. We didn't really talk about them much at all last week, but it's their second week in a row against a Chicago Public League team. Should be a win. I mean, they've played this team twice in the last 10 years in the playoffs, put up 54 and 55 on them. Each time, including in 2022, that was a 54-13 win here in Sycamore. I think they went to Lane Tech to play in the 2014 game and won that one. That was 55-0. So also worth pointing out that Westinghouse, from what I could tell, I think they won their first playoff game since 1994 when they beat Prosser last week. So, I mean, you think Sycamore probably rolls in this one, and, coaches don't like to look ahead, but, hell, we sure do.
In our defense, you mentioned we didn't talk a lot about Sycamore last week, and that's true. We had to pick and choose with twice as many games last week as this week. We sure did a great job kind of highlighting the ones that were competitive and were close games and had upset potential or were upsets. I think we did a good job culling that. So hopefully again this week we're talking about a lot of competitive, good football games that people when they go Friday are like, oh, I know a little bit more about this matchup now thanks to Eddie and whoever that other guy is.
Oh, you have that backwards, JT and whoever that other guy is. But the reason I wanted to bring up Sycamore was not so much for this week, but boy, is there going to be a good game. I mean, again, normally we're the last podcast going, save the best for last, obviously. But, we're going off first. So I'm not like 100% sure, like, Seuss and Josh, what they've touched on at this point. But I'm sure St. Francis Prairie Ridge, they will talk about a lot. That is a very intriguing 5A matchup. And the winner's going to go to Sycamore. So Sycamore will be off of presumably 2 running clock victories. I mean, they obviously had the big running clock win against the Noble Bulls last week, got that running game a little bit back on track. So it's been picking up second half of the year, getting a little more consistent, a little more where they need it. It'd be interesting if they can have one more, game like that, have some confidence going in to, whoever they're going to have to play, either the private school that always gets to this far or, Prairie Ridge, which I think they have a little history of being successful.
Slight bit. Yeah, you're getting to that point where when you look ahead at the next week and then like the matchup after, we're looking at week 2 of the playoffs and then you start looking at week 3, it's going to be all those, big hitters, those big, we were talking about Morris earlier and the winner, they get the winner of, what would it be? Morgan Park and Metamora, which, not exactly strangers to the playoffs or to being great. And then on the other half of that south side of the bracket, you probably are looking at Peoria High playing either Joliet Catholic or Sacred Heart Griffin. Man, is that going to be a game. And then you're going to get the winner of that, possibly playing Morris, possibly playing Morgan. So it's just you're getting to this point in the brackets where everywhere you go, it's just, spinning wheels of death awaiting you. And it's fun to watch the teams kind of go and see who comes out of those battles of just programs that you've heard about, so much over the years that have had so much success.
Yeah. And the North End set up that way to be either take your pick of Sycamore or the other ones you mentioned there, Prairie Ridge or St. Francis. matching up in a semifinal against, Naz or potentially even Rochelle. So
yeah, Naz, Bennett, Rochelle. Not to dismiss Woodstock North either, but it's not to dismiss Wood. But yeah, I mean that's that you're just sitting here talking about. You get to this point in the bracket and they don't get any easier, as a coach said to me years ago. Old Kelly Kane said to me years ago, they don't get any easier, JT. They don't get any easier. So that's what happens when you win a playoff game.
It's been a while since Sycamore coach Joe Ryan's brought it up, so maybe he's saying it again. I'm not sure. But for the longest time, Sycamore lost this unbelievable game in the playoffs a few years ago. I think it was 2019, actually, where they ran like 28 consecutive offensive plays, but fumbled 3 times or twice that were returned for touchdowns and ended up losing. Wouldn't say the name of the team for years, just called them the B word because it was Rockford Boylan. So there's a transition for you as we move down into 4A. I figure Coal City Boylan, that's probably one that you want to toss out there for a second.
I do think that should be a good one. It'll be interesting. Coal City's coming off a 41-13 kind of dismissal of Johnsburg, which kind of, wasn't unexpected. Johnsburg had a good season, but Coal City is Coal City and you expect them to do well. The thing with Coal City is, it's been a few years since they've made a deep run in the postseason. So, this is where, okay, you got Boylan. It's in Rockford on Saturday. That's a 1:00 kickoff. Boylan's coming off a shutout of South Shore. If Coal City gets past this one, now you're looking at a possible matchup with, the next game that we were really going to talk about, possibly Dixon. And man, Coal City Dixon, that could be a fun one to talk about.
Yeah, no, that should be really interesting. Dixon has Chicago Ag Science coming up. Well, you take Dixon here. You've talked about them a bunch because I don't want to steal your thunder on the Dukes.
Not at all. Dixon, having an amazing season. They've lost 1 game to Byron, and that was by 1 point. Other than that, they pretty much dominated everyone else in the regular schedule or regular season. But last week they didn't dominate. They won 35-14 over Marengo, and if you were just looking at the scores list, you'd be like, man, yep. There goes Dixon at it again. But that game was tied in the fourth quarter, Eddie. I mean, that was a 14-14 game in the fourth quarter. So, Dixon, it's good to get tested and kind of get those butterflies out of the way. And, they were able to finish the game strong. You hope they can carry that over against Ag Science and, possibly preserve that matchup with Coal City or Boylan. And because I think Dixon and Coal City, the way Coal City plays defense and the way Dixon puts up points, I just think that would be a, immovable object, irresistible force type matchup. That would be really fun to watch. And I kind of did a little bit of research on Ag Science, not a ton, but they were runners up in the Public League White Southwest. Their entire schedule, including last week's playoff win, 22-12 over Clemente, has been against Chicago teams. They have not ventured outside of the city yet. So going to Dixon will be their first time doing that this year. And they play a lot of, games with like football scores, I would say. And I know that sounds stupid, but a lot of games like you'd see on an NFL, 30-13 and 24-12, and 12 is a horrible example. 24-10, just a lot of, not a lot of blowouts one way or the other outside of a 3-week stretch earlier in the year for Ag Science. So Dixon's going to be trying to get past the second round for the first time since 2017 and just the third time in program history. So, this is a Dukes team that I think things line up very nicely for them to maybe get this one and, have a matchup. Oh, boy, that'd be fun with Coal City.
Yeah, I think that I think Dixon takes care of things on their end. I don't want to give Coal City a pass past Boylan, but definitely because actually the Nick 10 kind of struggled in the playoffs. I think I might be wrong on this, but I think Belvedere North and Boylan were the only Nick 10 teams to win in the first round.
That might be
Belvedere North getting past Caneland behind Ben Boucher, 4 touches, 208 yards, 4 touchdowns.
That's a good day.
Yeah, that's just a stat line people have. So,
but I think if Dixon does survive Ag Science, I think they're on the road next week, no matter what. This is their second home game, and Coal City's on the road, and Boylan.
Yeah, Boylan had a round 1 road game. So
yeah, I think Boylan was on the road round 1, right? So
yeah, 15 seed they would have been.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's that's going to be a heck of a one. We good on 4A?
I think so.
On 4A.
I think so.
3A. I know you're going to want to talk Eureka Wilmington.
Yeah.
And not just because it's bold in my notes, but also because,
Hey, I'm not above hitting Command B by accident and highlighting, Monticello, Williamsville by accident. No, but
that's not an accident.
Yeah. But Eureka 9-1, Wilmington 10-0. These are two, kind of powerhouse programs that I am tangentially familiar with, that I get to see maybe once every other year. Haven't seen Eureka this year, did see Wilmington, but we did have one of our reporters, Bill Fresco's, down with Eureka. They won just an absolute nail biter against Peatone last week. Peatone was not able to give Wilmington the challenge that some of us thought that they would this year in that Illinois Central 8 conference. But, Peatone, good team, good solid team. Not at the level of Wilmington. So if Eureka struggle with them, you got to like Wilmington's chances here. But Eureka's a good team. And, the last week they really threw it around a little bit. They have a senior quarterback, Austin Gerber, who just seems like an electric playmaker for them. So I think it's a matchup of kind of different styles, different philosophies. It's tough to bet against Wilmington at this point. I mean, you're defending 2A champ, you're in 3A, and what did they win? They beat Stillman Valley, but 42-7, I think, last week, 42-10, something like that.
Yeah.
So 42-7. So yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to not like Wilmington's chances here at home, and then then you kind of sit there and look, and okay, another one where I'm really excited for that next round if things fall the way I think they could fall. Dupec's on the road at Paxton Buckley Loda. So if Dupec takes care of business, you're talking about Wilmington going and visiting Dupec in what should just be an awesome matchup.
Yeah, no, that one's actually exciting. Dupec just rolled Genoa Kingston 66-0. We were talking about the potential for a blueprint in that one, but GK just was not able to take advantage. Obviously, Dupec made that next to impossible. You saw Dupec 2 weeks ago. I saw Dupec last week. I think this is officially where we think Dupec might be good portion of our podcast.
Yes. I've checked my sources, but PBL's Paxton Buckley Loda's that's not a rollover game for Dupec, I don't think. I mean, obviously they're the favorite. They're a 3 seed over an 11 seed, 1-loss team against a 3-loss team. But Paxton Buckley Loda also a program with a decent history and playoff somewhat regular. So Dupec's got to get there first, and so does Wilmington. But if they do, that's a matchup. I'm fortunate enough to be at a stage in my career where I oftentimes can make my own schedule, and that's one where I'm going to be like, I wonder if I can justify that one. So Steve Susi and I might be arm wrestling for the rights to that one.
Yeah, before we hop down to 2A, the one thing I do want to kind of point out in 3A is as we're looking ahead to third round matchups, because there's the possibility we're not back next week. We'll see how many teams are standing, but this might be the season finale, or it's just a Sycamore and Wilmington podcast. But one potential thing in the second round is Princeton, Montini Princeton. First of all, can Montini beat Bryan? I only bring this up because Montini, private school, playing way down because the multiplier hasn't kicked in for a couple of years.
Yeah, Byron Montini this week. That's a 1:00 kickoff Saturday. That's going to be one to really keep an eye on. I expect the points to fly. And then, that game that's coupled with them, that would be a matchup next week, is 9-1 Princeton visiting Chicago King. That's a game at Gately. You don't want to. You got to like Princeton's chances in that one anytime you kind of see this.
It's definitely set up for them to take care of business. And
so then you see, Princeton and Byron Montini. I have a fun Chicago King story. Do we have a second?
No. Moving on. No.
Basketball. I hate bringing up basketball until it's actually here. But for whatever reason.
It is, by the way. Girls practices started.
Yes. Chicago King used to come to Streeter for some reason when I was a high school student in Streeter. So we're talking late 80s, early 90s. And there was a game where Streeter's teams weren't so hot back then during that era. And I think in the first 3 possessions, King stole it from Streeter at like midcourt and dunked it. And just everyone there was just like, oh, we didn't get that down here. The slam dunk in high school basketball really is, wasn't what it nowadays. Every team has a couple kids who can throw it down on a breakaway. It wasn't that way back then, and that's the thing. So that's always what comes to my mind whenever I think of Chicago King. But yeah, anyway, total aside. But yeah, I mean, Byron and Montini, what a matchup, and then probably Princeton waiting there for whoever wins that one. That's just going to be, some great football in 3A.
Which brings us down to 2A, where Seneca is going to face the law firm of Bismarck, Henning, Rossville, and Alvin.
The BHRA. Yeah, I believe they used to be. This one I didn't get a chance to get notes down because, as Eddie mentioned, we are recording earlier than we normally do.
Was this an accidental bold one?
No. It was bold. I even have the 2 little plus signs. I just didn't get to actually put the notes in. But I know a bit about, I know plenty about Seneca and a bit about BHRA. I believe they were in that Vermilion Valley, what have you, Sangamon Valley, Vermilion Super Conference together. Back a few years ago. I think Bismarck was in that. So I think they have a bit of a history together. Yeah, Seneca's 7 seed, 9-1. Their only loss was to aforementioned Dupec. Bismarck Henning comes in undefeated. And, obviously having a great year. This game is in Bismarck, Saturday, 2:00 kickoff. Seneca got a test last week. I think maybe more so than they thought. They were trailing at halftime to El Paso Gridley. I spoke with Brian Hoxie yesterday. He was a reporter who'll also be covering this coming week for Friday Night Drive. But, he mentioned to me kind of, he never really felt like Seneca was in trouble, even though they were behind on the scoreboard. Kind of felt like they were in control. But, they end up winning 39-23 in a game I believe they trailed at halftime. So Seneca, that's coming off a week 9 loss to a very good Dupec team. So Seneca's kind of having to, after a season where they pretty much rolled everybody here down the stretch, that second time with Marquette, that Dupec game, that's first round playoff game with El Paso Gridley, Seneca's they're getting tested a little bit. And that's a good thing as you get deeper into the playoffs, not only surviving those tests, but kind of getting stronger from them, you hope. Bismarck Henning comes in off a 14-6 win over Erie Prophetstown.
Yeah, no, if you look at BHRA, they played 2 close games to start the year, 21-18, 21-20. It looks like they're in a closed loop conference. The Vermilion sealed off. So those were 2 conference wins they started with, but they didn't play a close game after that. They put up 40 points every week, 50 points, and looks like maybe 5 of the last 6 weeks, something like that. Putting up points and then hit the playoffs, struggle to pass Erie Prophetstown. So it's going to be interesting. I think if I'm picking, I'm going Seneca in this one.
Yeah, I think I would too. Tough going on the road against a team that's, hasn't lost a game all year and pick another team as a favorite. But, Seneca plays very good football and they've had some nice tests. I think, Eddie, I tagged you on that thing on X on Twitter. Susie, 3 teams in the state that sent at least 3 teams to the playoffs and went undefeated.
In 3 conferences, yeah.
Yeah, 3 conferences, yeah. And one of them was the Chicagoland Prairie, Seneca, Ottawa Marquette, which we'll talk about, and Dwight Gardner, South Wilmington. So, they did have Seneca had some weak spots on its schedule, but that Dupec game in week 9, the 2 meetings with Marquette, Dwight's a quality football team. Seneca has played some good competition. It's, as we said earlier, it's only going to get tougher. And then next week, awaiting them, probably, you got 2 9-1 teams playing in that game 20 in 2A, in the north half of 2A. It's Chicago Christian, which I don't know a ton about. And then you have Tri-Valley, which I do know a good amount about, and they're really good. So, that's going to be who awaits the winner of Seneca, Bismarck, Henning. And like I said, it's just it's all good teams from here, Eddie.
I'm just going to point out my issue with the Chicagoland Prairie, not that it is bad, but that it is a Frankenstein's monster of teams that should not have to exist in a true and just world where there are districts.
Yeah, it's a Frankenstein's monster whose limbs are falling off. Yes.
So that's all I was saying. It's not a bad conference. And obviously, and they proved it. So, hey, might as well. Marquette, Galena.
Well, Marquette was one of those ones we both talked about last week that kind of, this is that kind of matched up well for them. And they didn't just, we thought there was a blueprint for them to, win a close game against Rushville Industry up in Rushville. And they didn't. They absolutely dominated Rushville Industry, 44-6 in the first round. And it's so weird. I as I'm sitting here looking at the bracket, I don't remember things playing out this well in terms of a bracket for Marquette in years. And this is one of Marquette's, down years in terms of what they did in the regular season. They went 5-4, 6-4 now with that playoff win. They're visiting Galena, which also pulled off an upset in round one. They beat, I can find that. Yes.
Stark County, 43-42.
Yeah, they beat Stark County by 1 point in a shootout. Marquette, probably the favorite in this. You got 2 6-4 teams playing each other. I don't know, man. I really.
This seems like a coin toss game. Galena's done some good things. So the NUIC is obviously tough. They've had a good strong run. Obviously, you could say similar things about Marquette. I literally think this is a coin flip game. We could spend, you could come back and visit this, every hour on the hour for the next 5 days and probably change your mind each and every time.
Yeah, I don't know. Galena's kind of not a team and you never know. They could have a great class. It's not a team you really think of. They did miss the postseason last year, whereas Marquette's there every year. Obviously they have, have had some success in the past, but not here real recently. I don't know, man. I really like Marquette's chances and for them to, get into the third round here. And it's so weird because this is, like I said, when this was a down regular season. And just kind of the way the brackets fell, the way that the upsets played out, Marquette has a great chance to be, home next week. Admittedly, playing probably Leroy, who plays Rockford Lutheran, also a Saturday game. But obviously going to be a tough foe. Everyone's going to be a tough foe in the third round. But I think Marquette's got a real good chance to go to Galena and come back with another win. We talk about teams that succeed in the playoffs and when the weather turns, and Marquette, they hit you really hard on defense, and they don't make mistakes, as long as they can play from ahead and don't get behind on the scoreboard, behind in the chains. They're perfectly happy taking 3.33 yards every carry and, going for it on 4th and inches and just moving down the field, eating up 8 minutes of clock a drive. That's the type of team they are. And that's the type of team that, can find a way to kind of advance in these playoff games. So I think it matches up well for them. That's a good one. Another one in 1A, Eddie, we got Newman, at 8-2, visiting Gibson City, Melvin Sibley, another team that's down south of me in what should be, we're talking about 2 teams that have combined for 8 state championships.
Yeah, no, this seems really interesting. Sterling, I'm trying to think, had that, who'd they face last week? I remember it was a solid win for them, taking care of business. Obviously, they've only lost to Princeton, who we already talked about. I'm liking Newman here. Am I wrong? Newman, tell me I'm wrong.
Newman beat Hope Academy 50-22.
We thought it was going to be, but potentially a good one. But Newman ended up, getting a strong performance that it's got to give them a lot of confidence going into this round.
Yeah, I think it's a great game. GCMS. I've had some history with them back when they were in the Heart of Illinois conference. I guess other than the Heart of Central Illinois. But back when saw them a lot against Fieldcrest and Flanagan over the years. GCMS, just a great program. A couple state championships under their belt. Their only loss this year was to Leroy, who's undefeated, and that we talked about is playing Rockford Lutheran this week, and is just kind of the one that everyone's worried about in that top half of the bracket here in 1A. I think you're right. I think Newman's kind of a little more maybe battle tested, but all that being said, Gibson City is year after year just a outstanding football team. I think this could be a really good matchup.
Yeah, no, this is going to be a great matchup in a week full of great matchups. Obviously, I will be in Chicago on Saturday. That's my game for the Sycamore Westinghouse contest. Where are you at?
TBD. I plan to either be in.
Are they good? We didn't talk about them.
TBD.
Yeah, are they good?
There's one as many. It's probably 8-man by now. Probably down to 8-man with that. But yeah, I always like covering like Flanagan, Cornell, Woodland against Gibson City, Melvin, Sibley, and I think one year I wrote in the lead like there was more letters in the team names than points scored in this matchup or something like that.
Well, yeah, but you can say that about a 21-14 game, I think. But
yeah, But yeah, I'll be at it might have been yards gained in the first half or something. I can't remember. But yeah, I'm either going to be at Dwight for Elmwood Brimfield visiting Dwight Gardner South Wilmington. Dwight, kind of a feel good story. They beat Moments 41-13. Really, just kind of took it to them, kind of showing like kind of the strength of Marquette, Seneca, Dwight, and then honestly St. Bede, which ended up 2-7, but they won week 9 against Ottawa, and that's a 1A team taking on a 6A, 5A, 6A. But yeah, I St. Bede had a lot of close losses. We could very easily be talking about them, while we're talking about these 1A, 2A teams from the Chicagoland Prairie. But we're not. They fell on the wrong side of a lot of scores. But yeah, I'll either be in Dwight or I'll be down in Gibson City for that one we just talked about, kind of depending on how things fall with coverage. It's this time of year you go where you're needed, right, Eddie?
Exactly. So we'll see where that is next. Oh, click the pick. I'm skipping right over the click the pick. I'm the roll first on this one because I'm going with Grant Gensler. I alluded to him from Rochelle. I mean, it's a tough matchup against Bennett. It's at home. The Lobos had the big week last week, so they threw the ball last week. So I think this week it's going to be Gensler's turn to put up some numbers. And not that I'm guaranteeing the Rochelle upset, or I guess it's not an upset or whatever it would be. I'm not that I'm saying that, but I would like to see Rochelle beat a private school. That would be nice.
Good pick. I'm going down to 1A, one of the games we just talked about. Ottawa Marquette at Galena. Like I said, I'm a little more bullish on Marquette's chances in this one. They just have a great couple running backs to running out of that wing tee. One is Peyton Gutierrez, who we featured in our preseason Friday Night Drive preseason preview magazine. The other one that's kind of emerged and really here the second half of the season has kind of taken the majority, I would say the majority of the carries, but has eaten up the majority of the yards and the touchdown is Grant Dose for Marquette. He's my pick to click. If their game plan plays out, if their blueprint to victory plays out, he's going to have a really big game against Galena and send Marquette into the third round.
Okay, so that does it for this week, possibly the season. We'll see if we're back next year, or we'll see if we're back next week. Yeah. So, anyway, this is either way, it's been a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope everyone can get out and see a playoff game this weekend. We're getting some more fall-like weather here. But definitely get your leaves raked, to try and find a half hour during the week to get it done. That way you don't have to do it Saturday. You can head out to a football field near you and see a game. Hopefully week 11 here, lives up to week 10, because it's just been a great start to the playoffs, Eddie.
Yeah, and it'll blow week 10 out of the water for as good as week 10 was. That's just the way it works. And next week we'll blow this week out of the water. So, again, thank you all for listening. I'm Eddie Carifio. That's JD Pedelty. Thank you very much.
Take care.